You know that friend who always leaves the party first, the one who slips out while everyone else is just getting started. Maybe you've watched them grab their coat when the night is barely underway, and you've wondered what is wrong with them. Or maybe you are that person, and you've spent years wondering what is wrong with you. Here's the thing though, nothing about people who leave parties early is actually normal, and that is precisely what makes them fascinating. They're the ones who show up and actually pay attention, the ones who notice when someone's smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. They're your coworkers, who are somehow the most popular at the office, but decline every happy hour after the first round. The friends who genuinely love you but will absolutely fake a phone call to escape your birthday dinner. And here is what nobody tells you. Their need to leave early isn't a flaw in their personality. It is actually a sign of something much deeper. It is a sign of a nervous system that processes everything, and I mean everything, at a completely different intensity than most people. Psychologists call it sensory processing sensitivity, but the people who have it just call it being completely exhausted by rooms full of humans. Picture this. You are 8 years old at a birthday party, and something feels different about you. Other kids are screaming with joy, but the sound hits your ears like sandpaper, and you can't figure out why nobody else seems bothered. You notice the mom in the corner who looks tired, the dad checking his watch, the kid who wasn't invited standing at the fence. You absorb all of it, every signal, every tension, every unspoken thing in the room, and your brain just doesn't have an off switch. So you learn to leave, not because you are antisocial, but because leaving is how you survive. Dr. Elaine Aron spent decades studying this, and her research found that roughly 15 to 20% of the population processes sensory information more deeply than others. Their brains don't filter out background noise the way most brains do. Everything gets equal processing power, which is both a gift and a curse. The gift is that they catch what everyone else misses. They're the ones who remember your throwaway comment from 3 months ago. But here is the thing about catching everything. You can't unfeel it. You can't unhear the conversation happening behind you. You can't stop your nervous system from calculating every exit, every potential conflict, every shift in someone's tone of voice. And after an hour or two of that, your social battery doesn't slowly drain. It crashes. This is why you'll find them in the bathroom at parties. Not because they're sick, but because they need 90 seconds where nobody is looking at them. And there is something else going on here that most people never talk about. Let's call it the hypervigilance pattern. Watch someone who leaves parties early when they first arrive. Their eyes will scan the room before they've said hello to anyone. They're not being paranoid. They're mapping the space, figuring out where the bathroom is, where the quiet corner might be, how quickly they could leave if they needed to. Psychologists might call this a survival mechanism, but for these people, it is just how they've always operated. The interesting thing is that many of them had childhoods where reading a room wasn't optional. It was necessary. Maybe they grew up with unpredictable parents, or in households where the emotional temperature could shift without warning. They learned to read micro-expressions before they knew what micro-expressions were. They learned to hear the difference between a normal door close and an angry one. And that skill, that constant reading of rooms and people and energy, it doesn't just turn off when you grow up. It becomes automatic, and automatic vigilance is exhausting. Which brings us to why they actually leave. And here is what is fascinating. It is not that they're not having fun. Most of the time they genuinely are enjoying themselves. But there is this internal countdown happening that nobody else can see. A clock they've learned to trust that says your window is closing. Some researchers describe it as emotional regulation. The ability to recognize when you are approaching your limit before you actually hit it. The early leavers have usually learned this the hard way. They know what happens when they ignore that internal warning. They've had the panic attacks in parking lots, the crying in bathrooms, the complete shutdowns that come from pushing past their limit. So leaving early isn't avoidance. It is actually the opposite. It is them making sure they can come back. And let's talk about what happens after they leave, because this is the part that most people get wrong. The assumption is that they go home feeling lonely, wishing they'd stayed, replaying conversations, and regretting the early exit. But actually, what most of them feel is relief, genuine physical relief, like they've finally taken off shoes that were 2 sizes too small. Their nervous system finally gets to stop performing, and in that quiet, they become themselves again. But here is the paradox, and this is what makes these people so interesting. Many of them actually love people. They're often the most thoughtful friends, The ones who remember birthdays without Facebook reminders, who check in on you when you go quiet. They prefer depth over breadth. One real conversation over 20 surface-level ones. And that is not a limitation. That is a choice. Some psychologists describe them as ambiverts with a protective mechanism. Social enough to thrive in groups, sensitive enough to know when to step back. And that protective mechanism, the leaving early, it is not weakness. It is actually intelligence. It is knowing yourself well enough to honor what you need instead of performing what others expect. And here is the thing that took me a long time to understand. These early leavers aren't missing out on the party. They experienced the party fully, maybe more fully than anyone else there. They just did it in concentrated form. While everyone else was skimming the surface of 10 conversations, they went deep with 1 or 2 people who actually mattered. And then they left before the small talk killed the memory. There is this weird assumption in our culture that more time equals more connection. But these people know that is a lie. The best conversations they've ever had lasted 20 minutes. The best parties were the ones they left while they still wanted more. They figured out something that most people never learn, that presence matters more than duration, and energy is a finite resource. So if you are someone who leaves parties early, I want you to understand something. You are not broken. You are not antisocial. You are not missing some gene that makes people enjoy small talk. You are just built to experience things deeply, and deep experiences require recovery time. Your nervous system isn't defective. It is just more sensitive to input, which means you need to be intentional about output. And the people who matter, the ones worth keeping in your life, they'll understand that your early exit isn't rejection. It is actually respect for yourself and for them. Because you know that showing up depleted helps nobody. The truth is that people who leave parties early often have the richest inner lives of anyone in the room. They've spent so much time alone that they've actually gotten to know themselves, which is more than most people can say. They don't need the party to feel complete. The party is just a nice addition to a life they've already built on their own terms. And maybe that is the most radical thing of all, not needing external validation to feel whole. So the next time someone leaves your party early, don't take it personally. They're not running away from you. They're running toward themselves. And honestly, that is the healthiest thing anyone can do. If this hit home for you, please subscribe. And if you want to support these deep dives into the psychology of everyday life, hit that join button to become a channel member. I would genuinely appreciate your support. And I'll see you in the next one.